morning, everybody. Great, welcome. Happy Sunday. Happy fall, finally. I'm like so glad that it's like not 90 degrees today. Oh my gosh, it's so grateful. It's amazing. Yeah. I'm so bad at introductions. So I'm just gonna jump in as I usually do. We're just gonna get moving, and then hopefully we'll catch up with it together. So let's first talk about where we came from the last few weeks in Mark chapter 11. So we got to hear from Craig 2 weeks in a row. So 2 weeks ago, Craig talked about the beginning of the Holy Week, the triumphal entry. Everybody is shouting to Jesus. What word are they shouting? Hosanna, Hosanna. Does anybody know, or we maybe have talked about it before, remember what Hosanna means? Save us. Save us. Like, save us, please. It's like an emphatic save us, because they're under the thumb of the Roman Empire, and their king, their Messiah, has finally come through, and they're like, save us, please. Now is the time. And it's the Passover, which is the perfect time for you to do this. Save us, please. I won't give like a mimicking shout because I'm on a microphone, and that would do damage to all of us. But you can imagine, like, it's emphatic, it's crying, it's yelling, it's unabashed. Save us, please. Hosanna, Hosanna. Hosanna in the highest. Save us, God of the world. So then, after Jesus has entered, he's on his way to the temple. He's going to make some big claims here. But he goes by the fig tree first. He curses it for not having fruit, even though it's not in season. But as Craig mentioned, it doesn't even have buds. So it's not even showing like the ability, the possibility to be bearing any fruit the way that it's set up right now. He goes into the temple. He flips the tables. He brings his cattle whip, depending on, I can't remember if that's Mark or a different gospel, but yeah, he's driving people out. He's turning over the tables of the money changers and saying, this is supposed to be a house of prayer. You've made it a den of robbers. You people who are supposed to be the messengers and the leaders of the people Israel, you guys are stealing from your own people, and you're keeping people out of the presence of God. So that brings us to today, which is the very end of Mark chapter 11, which is going to be the first, so the next 2 or 3 weeks after this is a series of discourses. All of them happen in the temple, and they happen with a series of different Jewish leaders. Today is like a perfect example of a really classic rabbinic conversation that we'll get into in just a sec. So first things first, the setting in the temple. That's category number. We're going to talk about categories today. So I don't know if I have. Yes, I'll take it. It'd be awesome. The kingdom of God gives Christians new categories. So you guys, you have new categories. You have different categories than people who aren't necessarily Christian. You have different categories than people 2,000 years ago who didn't understand exactly who Jesus was and what kind of category he was. So my job today is maybe to teach you a new category. Ideally, for most of you, is just to remind you, emphatically, hopefully, of the new categories that you guys have, that maybe aren't the easiest categories and maybe aren't the most obvious categories, but they're the new categories that Jesus clearly gives us, and he's going to clearly give it to us today. So the temple is one old category. Now, the temple is home for who? God. The temple in the ancient world, that's where a God lives. You go there, and that's where you can meet with a God in some form. And even for the Israelites, this is where their God, Yahweh, lives. And this is where they can meet with him. This is where they can be closest to him. There's a sort of orderliness to how we meet with him as well. So flipping tables really isn't in that orderliness. Cursing fig trees, not really in that orderliness. But the way that the Jewish people would have set it up is an orderliness to meeting with God and becoming close to him. Can everybody just go in whenever they want to meet with God? No, absolutely not. Only a small number of people can. To get really, really close to God, only one person, the chief priest, can go in, and only once a year to the Holy of Holies. When they go in, this is actually such an intense moment for them. They would tie a rope around this person's waist or their ankle in case meeting with God that close would actually kill them. Then they could drag their body out by the rope. So it's very like hands off. Don't get too close to God. Only a few people can do that. So that's the first category. Now, it's easy to look, always. It's easy to look at the Pharisees and be like, those Pharisees. Those guys, they're so stuck up and they're so arrogant and they're so prideful. Is this the first or is this the second temple? This is the second temple. They've lost it before. Which one was better in their sight, the first or the second one? The first one. The first one was better. So they've lost this temple before. They're under the thumb of the Roman Empire again. Have you ever held on to something too tightly for fear of losing it before? Heather hasn't. But the rest of you probably have, right? It's so easy, especially whenever we've lost something before, especially whenever it's under threat of being lost again. It's so easy to grip that as tightly as we can, to put as many hedges around it as we can, because we are so afraid of losing that again. I'm just trying to humanize the Jewish leaders here for just a sec, because you and I absolutely could have and perhaps would have done the exact same thing if we were in their shoes. Now, what does Jesus do when he enters the story? He's going to face that fear. And the way that he's going to face it is by talking about some outside stuff, but he's going to go straight to the heart of it. He's going to go straight to the inside. That's where the genuine healing occurs for all the people that Jesus interacts with. He's going to go straight to face that fear head on. He's going to be very direct. The messianic secret that we've talked about, where Jesus performs an amazing healing, and he's like, but don't tell anybody else. Gone. That's at this point in the story, there's no more of that, and we're going to see the beginning of that today. So let's start with the beginning of our text, Mark chapter 11. If you have your Bibles, you can open to Mark chapter 11. If not, you can follow there. If you want to open the Bible on your phone, you can do it as well. Mark chapter 11. We're going to do this in two different sections today. So we got the end of chapter 11 and we got the beginning of chapter 12. So we're going to do this first section right here. So they came again to Jerusalem. This is Jesus and his disciples. As he was walking in the temple, the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders came. That group of three, chief priests, scribes, elders, that makes up the Sanhedrin. So if you've heard the Sanhedrin, it's like the highest Jewish council. They make all the big decisions. They can decide how and when and where to worship. So the Sanhedrin, like the biggest, baddest, most important people in the Jewish culture, are coming up to Jesus in the temple, and they ask him, by what authority are you doing these things? Who gave you authority to do these things? Jesus said to them, I will ask you one question. Now, this is him being very rabbinic here. This is classic, like maybe you've heard of it, maybe you did it in school, the Socratic method, that kind of thing, answering questions with other questions to get to your own sort of self-discovery. Jesus says, I will ask you one question, then answer me, and I will tell you by what authority I do these things. Was John's baptism from heaven or of human origin? Answer me. They discussed it among themselves. These are the smartest people of the Jewish community. If we say from heaven, they'll say, then why didn't you believe him? So look, it's stuck right there. But if we say of human origin, they were afraid of the crowd because everyone thought that John was truly a prophet. So they answered Jesus, we don't know. Now, when they say we don't know, are they saying, oh, you've totally befuddled us, I have no idea, I couldn't to guess? Or are they saying the second thing, which is, we're not going to pick one of the two answers for the two categories that we have? It's the second thing, right? They're being rabbinic in their response as well. They have an idea, like they do know. They're convinced that about what John's baptism really is, but they're either going to get stuck by a rabbi who's brought up a really good point to them, or they're going to get stuck by the people that they know they're supposed to be the messengers to, and they know they're supposed to be serving. So they're stuck. They acknowledge that they're stuck, and so they say, we don't know. And Jesus said to them, neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things. And then Mark ends. Just kidding. He keeps going. And this is like, it's so hilarious when you look at this with a rabbinic lens, because it's like very nuanced conversations. It's not very obvious. It's not very in your face. And so them saying, we don't know, is actually saying, good job, you've got us stuck here. Jesus says, I'm not going to tell you. And then he literally tells them in the next passage, like pretty blatantly. But here's where we need to pause real quick before we get into the second section. Was the Bible written to you? It wasn't written to you. It has something for you. It has something for you. For thousands of years, the Holy Spirit has carried the tradition of the Bible in in forms of languages that all people around the whole world can read and begin to understand and grow and see themselves in the story of this text. But the original writers of the Bible did not have you in mind. And so when they were writing this, they have a completely different perspective and completely different worldview than you. We can't imagine Jesus walking in that door and sitting down with like our elder team, and then our elder team asks Jesus like right here on this carpet with these wooden pews and these speakers and this right, like we gotta completely rewrite our perspective for the sake of this kind of message. That's why we talk about temples, and that's why we're going to talk about one other thing that I'm really excited about, which is vineyards today. So one thing that's really obviously clear, very normal, walk right outside and see it if you grew up in first century Israel, is what it takes to make a vineyard. So I have a picture of this. This is, and I think I have a zoomed in one. Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. So this is in Israel, and this is in a place called the Sorek Valley. You can see that it's kind of like that vineyard is facing, sorry, kick drum. That vineyard is facing this way. So Jerusalem is right over there, like a couple miles that way through a lot of like very steep hills and very deep valleys. The reason that I want to show you this is because, I mean, that's not a vineyard, okay? Maybe if you've seen a vineyard before, vineyards are usually, they're like erected on something. That's just in the ground. I can't remember exactly what that crop is, and I couldn't find it in my notes that I took, but you can see, is what you see on that hillside, is that like really like ripe and lending itself to being easy to cultivate and plow this land? No. Well, what do you see that makes it hard? Unintended. You see a bunch of rocks. So what's going to be easier, rocks or grass to plow? Grass. Okay, second question. How flat is that? Not Illinois, right? Yeah, that's what a lot of the central part of Israel looks like. It's like very hilly and lots of valleys, which brings up interesting questions about what it means to be in the promised land when you have to work so hard to be in the promised land. This is incredibly steep. So when we were here this day in Israel with this class, we had a lot of college students, but we also had a bunch of people from like all over the United States coming in our group. And we had a number of older people, some people that like walking just in general was a little bit tough for them, some of them with knee or hip replacements. And our teacher actually said, you guys probably should not come today, like to this specific part, because the slopes are so steep and so slick that you genuinely might get hurt. And that's been true for thousands of years in this area. This is like really well protected land. So, like obvious or not so obvious farmland? Not so obvious. Not so obvious farmland. But this is where they chose to do vineyards. Now here's what this process looked like. Because vineyards are typically smaller, because you can have like a lot of grapes in a very small area, and then again you can like bring it up from the ground and they can take up some of the airspace. They're typically smaller in terms of acreage than other kinds of farming that they would do. Vineyards are unbelievably labor-intensive to install and to maintain. Here's kind of a step-by-step process of how this works. First things first, you need to clear the ground before you get into anything. Now again, what's the ground made of a lot of? Rock. Yeah, Cenomanian limestone is what it's called specifically. Whenever they say like God is our rock, they're thinking of that kind of thing because it's very sturdy. It's also really annoying and really hard to move. So they have to first carve the vineyard into a rugged hillside that's not primed for cultivation. They need to clear stones from this area, and then they need to build up retaining walls, and then they need to transport topsoil from somewhere else, and they need to bring it here. And then, once they've done, now are they doing this with backhoes and like mechanical plows? Like, are they doing this with any of that? No, it's like just human power. That's all they've got. And then they have tools too, but this is long, it's slow, it's laborious. Once they have moved the topsoil, then finally you can start to plow, and then you need to clear the ground, and then you need to turn the soil, and then you need to plant the vines. After you plant the vines, you need to prune them. It's very woody, thick, stocky vines, and then you need to protect it from predators and grazing animals and raiders, and then you need to process the grapes, so you need to build 2 vats for a wine press, one for the grapes to sit in, that you then shred, and then it goes into another one where it ferments. Long, laborious, exhausting, tiring process. This would have been obvious to the readers and the writers of the Bible, like from the get-go. Not so obvious for us today, but it's the lens that we need to see when we think vineyard. I want you to have that picture in your brain, and I want you to think about the people who would have to beat this ground into submission, like the promise from the beginning in Genesis 3, that would literally have to like turn and reorder and turn upside down this ground in order to make it actual fertile land. So we're going to jump to a passage in Isaiah that's going to show us exactly what we should be thinking about in Mark chapter 12, and then we're going to wrap this all up and we're going to bring this home. I know you maybe feel like you're drinking out of a fire hydrant right now. I promise it's going to come together at the end. So Isaiah chapter 5, if you want to flip there too, if not, it'll be up here. This comes, Kyle, if you could throw the timeline up, that'd be super helpful. Isaiah is the prophet. I wish I brought my laser pointer. Does anybody have a laser pointer? That makes sense. Isaiah is the prophet in the time of the kingdom of Israel, right before they're about to fall. So there's united monarchy up until David and Solomon, and then right after it splits into Israel and Judah. And Isaiah is the main prophet speaking to the kingdom of Israel, telling of their eventual exile by the Assyrian Empire. So that orange part right there says kingdom of Israel. And then right above it, it says Isaiah career in parentheses. And then right after 722, that's the exile of Israel by the Assyrian Empire. The temple falls much later. But Isaiah, think the kingdom of Israel. The specific group that he's talking to is a king named Jotham, who's brought up a couple times in the Old Testament, and other monarchs that came before him. And we'll see what Isaiah has to say about him right here. Isaiah chapter 5. So, I will sing about the one that I love, a song about my loved one's vineyard. The one I love had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. He broke up the soil, cleared it of stones, and planted it with the finest vines. He built a tower in the middle and even dug out a winepress there. He expected it to yield good grapes, but it yielded worthless grapes. The Hebrew, it closely translates to like wild or like stinky grapes. So now, residents of Jerusalem and men of Judah, please judge between me and my vineyard. What more could I have done for my vineyard than I did? He just listed all the hard work that he did. Why then, when I expected a yield of good grapes, did I yield worthless, wild, stinky grapes? Now I will tell you what I am about to do to my vineyard. I will remove its hedge, and it will be consumed. I will tear down its wall, and it will be trampled. I will make it a wasteland. It will not be pruned or weeded. Thorns and briars will grow up. I will also give orders to the clouds that rain should not fall on it. For the vineyard of the Lord of armies he's telling us what this metaphor means. He's telling us, identifying each role in the story. For the vineyard of the Lord of armies is the house of Israel and the men of Judah, these divided kingdoms, both of them. The plant that he delighted in. He expected justice, but saw injustice. He expected good grapes, but he saw bad grapes. Good fruit, saw bad fruit. He expected justice, but saw injustice. He expected righteousness, but heard cries of despair. There's plenty going on here. That obviously could be a sermon in and of itself, but the thing that catches my attention, at least this time, in connecting it with Mark as well, is it clear exactly who Yahweh blames for the vineyard yielding bad fruit? Okay, think about the people of Israel. Is it Israel's fault that they went astray, that they went away from Yahweh? Do they have some amount of culpability? Absolutely yes. Now, here's the incredible thing about the story of the Bible and about this passage right here. God keeps calling it my vineyard. Time and time again, book after book of the Bible that you read, king after king after failed king after failed king after failed king, it's still my people of Israel. It's still my beloved people. It's still the people of Yahweh. Israel, the ones who wrestle with God. God names that, like, I did everything that I could and should for this vineyard. There should be good fruit here, and there's not. So something is malfunctioning with the fruit itself. And also, it's still my vineyard. And I'm still taking ownership for this. I'm not going to just leave it to the wolves to never turn over again. He is going to leave it to the elements and to trampling and to stealing so that he can turn the world upside down one more time. Like this might remind you of like Genesis 3, right? Like you're getting kicked out of the Garden of Eden. You're going to have to work the land and you're going to have to toil and labor for your entire life. It might remind you of Genesis 6, whenever in the story of Noah, whenever God is looking at the world that he has created and he sees injustice and wickedness and unrighteousness, and he says, we've got to turn it upside down again. Here's another iteration. I've got to turn it upside down again. It's still my creation. It's still my people. It's still my vineyard. I'm not going to turn it upside down. Okay, let's bring it home. Mark chapter 12. This is the last bit of scripture that you have to listen to me talk about this morning. The parable of the vineyard owner. That's at least what it says in mine, which I like because it makes it more about the vineyard owner than about the wicked tenants, which it might say in your translation. So, Jesus has just said, neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things, but here he's about to tell them exactly by whose authority. He began to speak to them in parables. A man planted a vineyard, put a fence around it, dug out a pit for a winepress, and built a watchtower. Sound familiar? Sound like Isaiah 5? If you're a first century Jewish listener, immediately, especially if you're an expert in Jewish law and prophets, and you're a part of the Sanhedrin, immediately you're thinking, Isaiah 5, okay, oh shoot, we're the vineyard, oh shoot, Jesus is going to turn it, or God is going to turn it upside down again. Okay, this sucks, he's got me in a bind again. Then he leased it to tenant farmers and went away. At harvest time, he sent a servant to the farmers to collect some of the fruit of the vineyard from them. But they took him, they beat him, and they sent him away empty-handed. Again, he sent another servant to them, and they hit him on the head, and they treated him shamefully, so it's getting even worse. Then he sent another, and they killed that one, getting even worse. He also sent many others, some they beat, and others they killed, worse and worse and worse and worse. He still had one to send, a beloved son. Who's the beloved son? Jesus. He's been called the beloved son twice, once at his baptism and then once more in the transfiguration, and here's the third time. The crowd listening who are following Jesus, they know who the beloved son is. They're like, oh, this guy, he's clever. The Sanhedrin are going to have to confront the truth that Jesus is bringing to them. Finally, he sent him to them saying, they will respect my son. But those tenant farmers said to one another, this is the heir. Come, let's kill him, and the inheritance will be ours. So they seized him, they killed him, and threw him out of the vineyard. What then will the owner of the vineyard do? He will come, and he will kill the farmers, and give the vineyard to others. For haven't you read this scripture? The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. This came about from the Lord and is wonderful in our eyes. They were looking for a way to arrest him, but feared the crowd because they knew he had spoken this parable against them. So they left him and they went away. They found themselves in the same bind, right? They can't say that Jesus is the Son of Man or he is the beloved Son or that he is God, but they also can't say that he's not because the crowd who do believe that about Jesus are there, so they're in a bind yet again. So they have to leave. They've gotten stuck by a superior rabbi once again. So, a couple closing things on Mark chapter 12. The time that has come, the harvest, the festival of Sukkot, as it's called, the festival of booths, it's actually happening right now. Today's actually day the 13th? Tomorrow is actually the last day of Sukkot, the week-long celebration for Jewish people around the world. They live in a tabernacle, or like a booth that they call it, that they build. They live there for a week, and they eat in there for a week. It's to celebrate the 40 years in the wilderness where they had to pick up and move the tabernacle to keep meeting with God. When that happens, they drink wine and they eat grapes because, as you could imagine, it's grape season. That's the harvest. That's whenever it's supposed to be good. And on the 1st and 8th day of that festival, each farmer is supposed to give a tax of grapes and a tax of wines to the temple. What the temple has done in the time of Isaiah and now is They have taken more than the tax. They have kept some from themselves, and then they've taken even more, and instead of giving it to the people, which the farmers are trying to have enough grapes and wine for everybody, instead of giving it to the people, they're giving it to the other cultures and the other kingdoms of the time, and they're trading it with their gods, and they're honoring it by putting up their high places in their temple. And now, the Sanhedrin is doing the same thing with Rome. They're doing the same thing that their fathers did 500, 600, 700 years ago. They're colluding and they're conspiring with Rome instead of taking care of their own people by their own categories. They're using Roman categories. Categories like, I've got to look after my own. And if I take care of me first, then I'll be good. And if I don't, then nobody else is. So, well, I guess it's going to come down to me or me. That's all that it is. That's a Roman category, and that's the category that the Jewish messengers at the time are using. Along with this category, they're saying, there's the heir. If we kill him, the vineyard will be ours. Did the vineyard ever belong to the heir? It's always been God's vineyard from the beginning. And so they're sorely mistaken by putting hedges not just around the temple and meeting with God, but also around Scripture. So they're keeping all of these people out from experiencing life and life that is full all the time, and they're continually putting them on the margins. They're continually shoving them down. They're continually saying, you don't have enough money, you don't dress the right way, you don't eat the right way, you don't think the right thing, you can't be my student, you can't be my friend. How dare you, Jesus, eat with those people? How dare you, Jesus, put them at the center? How dare you, Jesus, and here's a new category, instead of coming to the Sanhedrin and asking us to be at the center and to be your followers and to be the next promulgators of your message, how dare you go to the failed schoolboys who are now fishermen? How dare you go to the tax collector who is literally our enemy? How dare you try to heal them? How dare you go to the person that we hate, the person that is colluding against us, the person that is conspiring against us, even though they're conspiring with the Romans? How dare you go to the person that is antithetical to the Jewish way of life and you put them at the center? How dare you give them the keys to the kingdom of God? How dare you do that? What Jesus is doing in this discourse and the next several discourses over the next several weeks is he's going to completely splay open the categories that the Pharisees and Sadducees, the Sanhedrin, have built for themselves. And he's going to show them clearly, obviously, finally, I am the Messiah. I am the Christ. You keep putting your kings up there, and even though you don't have a king right now, you're acting as one because you think that it's the best way. But you'll remember your 1,000-year former father, Samuel, saying, this is not going to go the way that you want it to go. And a king is going to be the beginning of your demise. But the kind of king that Jesus shows them is the new category that we can look at. The kind of kings that Jesus shows them to be is a king that leads by serving. The new category. God owns the vineyard. The church, the people of God, are the ones that work strenuously to tend to it. We're the ones that have to carve up the stones and move it away and bring in new soil and work to it and keep tending to it and make sure that other vegetation doesn't take away from it, and we have to do it together. We're the ones that tend strenuously to the vineyard, to the people of God. Our king is somebody who washes our feet. Our king is somebody who doesn't give us qualifications before he calls us. He calls us first. Our king is the one that turns the world upside down. And he'll let the vineyard be trampled so that it can turn over again. So that the servants can be the leaders. The upside down kingdom is the one where you live by dying. A few weeks ago, I think at prayer, there was a psalm that talks about, it has that verse that the Lord will give you the desires of your heart. I'm paraphrasing. It's this, the living by dying thing is along the lines of, if there's something that you really want and you've always wanted it for your entire life, it doesn't mean exactly that Jesus is going to give you the desire that you've had for your entire life. By dying to yourself, by dying to your reputation, your priorities, your values, as good or as bad as they may be, Jesus is going to show you what the true desires of your heart actually are. He's going to show you what vibrant community, you can look around, vibrant community actually looks like. What cross-cultural, intergenerational, coming from all different backgrounds of life, what this kind of community, what this kind of vibrant community, this, frankly, category-breaking community actually looks like. I mean, what is the rest of the world doing on Sunday morning? You know what I mean? Like this might look weird. It doesn't fit obviously into our categories. You weekly see people who aren't your family more than you see your family sometimes. I know that's at least true for us. Like this is breaking all sorts of categories, and that's exactly what Jesus wants because he needs to turn the soil over. He needs to turn it he needs to turn it upside down. He knows that the way to fix what's happening on the outside is by healing what's on the inside. No kings, only priests. Everybody gets to be a priest in this kingdom. This is the new category.